Hello, Avihu. How are you doing?
Good. How are you, Katya?
Good, good. It's been a busy few weeks at Volteface. I assume it's even busier over there in Israel with Kanabo. It's been a very kind of exciting few weeks and busy February for you guys.
Yeah, definitely busy. Have some interesting milestones that we did in the last few weeks, and the industry in general. I love that you really see that the industry in the UK is actually evolving. And I like to tell the story that when I started the process with Cannabis, it was end of 18, beginning of 19, uh, the process of listing, sorry. And the meetings with bankers and investors were 180 degrees different than today. You would have discussions, and they will be so, worried from this industry. Not sure if the FCA will approve the London Stock Exchange. They were worried that investors will want to invest, and that maybe it's not an industry that is fitting the UK. So just seeing, this difference and how the market is reacting, and how the discussion is evolving, it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's so fantastic seeing how far the industry's come. Like you just said, 2 years ago, two and a bit years ago, the kind of stigma and attachment to cannabis was really different. And I guess over the last few weeks, the London Stock Exchange listings have they've really created a lot of buzz around the industry, and especially so I think in the mainstream media. I think everyone that's kind of in the cannabis space, in one way or another, is really excited and it's big news. But I think in the grand scheme of things, just mainstream wise, it's huge news too. So I guess what would you say, um, in the grand scheme of things and largely speaking, what do these listings mean for the cannabis industry? Like what kind of implications can we see emerging from this?
I would say that now the discussion is starting to be more on basis of information. I would even say, hopefully, scientifically based. Until now, we had discussion that was based on emotions, fear, and okay, but cannabis was villainized for many years as something that is a drug, and now there's already a clear understanding that cannabis is a medicine. The growth of CBD helped for that as well, because people started to now suddenly cannabis or hemp material is a common product that anyone can use, and together with starting to understand the benefit of medical cannabis, we're getting to this discussion of what is the right path to make cannabis more available. So first of all, that's great. That's where we want to be. We want to be on scientifically logical discussions. I was always jealous about the Brits, because they have all this history of debate and having discussions based on facts, where other countries are a bit more emotional, I would say, for not as a positive thing. Um, and I hope that will be the case now with cannabis as well. What is the right reform that needed to be done? How do we do it properly? And now is this opportunity. So it's a real opportunity that the government decision makers have to really leverage this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I really like how you touched on the fact that cannabis was kind of the way we approached cannabis in the past has been around emotion and I guess it kind of dates back to drug policy in general being around a moral debate rather than a logical one. Yeah, I think it's great. I think these listings are quite a symbol of a renaissance with the industry and the sector in general. So it's a very exciting time to be involved in
And I
this
would
sort of
say even more how hypocrite it is for the United States to be the ones that were pushing forward, villainizing these drugs, doing the drug war for many, many years, and now being the first ones that actually promoting recreational. Like,
Yeah.
just a few years ago, the UN was pointing on and Uruguay when they were the first country to fully legalize, and they, they came with some claims that this is uh, worldwide. It's a drug, and it's an issue to be suddenly stepping out of the drug control of the UN, and that's while in the United States there's states that are fully legalized. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, things are changing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the US is quite an interesting place at the moment, anyways, because there's so much reform coming from the states, but on a federal level, cannabis is still illegal. So I think it's quite a difficult and interesting playing field to navigate. I mean, so is Europe. I think European countries, individual countries, are all at different stages. But yeah, I'd say that it's kind of we're seeing a wave of renaissance with cannabis over the last few months, and I think there's more to come. And with all these positive developments in London, with the listings, I mean, clearly it's a very exciting time, both for the UK industry and for the Kanabo company. So would you say that London's set to become the next hub for the cannabis industry?
It definitely can. So I don't think there's a question if it can or can't. Right now, everything is set in place for the UK to lead this market. From the benefit of not being tied anymore to this European Union that is more bureaucratic union, so decision making can be faster. I don't know if it will be, and the financial industry being first is definitely an opportunity. So having the capability to bring companies and to help fund them, and funding companies in the end of the day will result in more research as well, because part of the strategy, part of Cannabis strategy is to support clinical trials. We are looking for any active clinical trials, both in CBD and medical cannabis, to support both with the product or the device and financially as well. So you see that's something that is across the board, and I believe that the UK can do that. The decision, will it happen, is more, I would say, political uh, decision. Like, what will be the results of politicians, decision makers? Will they grab this opportunity? I hope they will. I don't see another country, except maybe Germany, out there that can compete on that, really leading the market.
Yeah, and with kind of research and development as well. I guess it's one of those. I think the UK's got an amazing opportunity now that really shouldn't be missed. Is as you've mentioned with Germany being a potential competitor, but I think across Europe there's now they're really going to miss out on a great opportunity. I know you've touched on Brexit, and obviously we've got COVID as well. I think this kind of opportunity isn't one that comes often, and especially with kind of a double dip in recession now, it's one that should definitely be taken.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Creating of jobs, taxation, across the board. It's like there's not many times in history that you have an industry that not only can bring an economical relief and some help, but actually be good for people and for patients. So yeah, that's why we're in this industry, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's so much good that can come out of it, and just there's just such a wide range of benefits that cannabis can bring. So it's yeah, it's very exciting to be a part of. And I guess this is a question kind of linked to what we've already touched on with the listings being this kind of going into the mainstream media. But obviously, cannabis invokes strong reactions from the public, which are both either positive or negative. You've touched on kind of the emotional aspect of the debate. Do you think that? Do you think, and how do you think the listings and the progress we're seeing is helping to normalize the industry? Because obviously, it's kind of a now cannabis in the UK is a serious and legitimate business. You can publicly and legally invest in it, and it's kind of weaved into real life. So yeah, what are your thoughts on this kind of normalization?
I think it's exactly how you're right about the strong emotions of people in the industry. That's correct. Because, or you were brainwashed for many years and you still believe it's a drug. Some people had bad experience with cannabis. They used a high THC when they were young and didn't know how to use it properly and had bad experience. But in the same time, you have these people that's something that a miracle medicine, a miracle plant to change their life. And obviously, they are very passionate as well on their side. And so, yeah, you have a lot of passionate people. That's a good thing, but not always good because they are very involved, very passionate. I think that when you have something that becoming mainstream, and the discussion around it is moving to these financial pages, and the discussion is like a legitimate business being suddenly, you know, measured on the same platform as well. And I'm coming from a country where cannabis became normalized several years ago. Like, so you have today the cannabis industry, and definitely technology in cannabis industry seems similar to cybersecurity or any other high tech or startups, or any other agriculture business if it's in the cultivation side. Um, and it is going to change everything. You will see that this shift of minds will change across the board, and hopefully beyond the UK as well. I hope to see other countries in Europe following.
Yeah, I think there's just such a broad range of uses for cannabis that it's clear to the kind of the mainstream media and public that it's so much more than just a recreational drug. There's a huge industry that's not actually super niche. There's so many uses, and the way it can be weaved into to everyday life. And I mean, clearly there's a lot of hype right now around cannabis in the industry. It's been a very exciting few months, from the UN vote to the listings, lots going on. But how can the industry ensure that all of this translates into kind of long term sustainable development? Or do you think that this will kind of occur naturally just because of the implications that medical cannabis has?
I do think that some regulation is required. I think that we do want to see real businesses, both on the stock exchange and in real life. I would say you don't want to have just these businesses that coming with a story or a plan, or maybe they have a future opportunity to get a license to cultivate and run on this hype, enjoy this hype, but without being able to deliver anything. So without execution, suddenly you will have a bad stigma for the whole industry. You will have people saying, "Well, yeah, but these companies they're just full of stories. They don't have any plan. They don't have capability to execute." So that's something that is negative for the industry. I think it's negative for anything. So that's where I believe that some level of control, some level of regulation is important and required, and at the same time on the quality of products. Everyone talked about CBD, so I think I'm not going to add anything to say now that you do need to test and you have some regulation for CBD, and it's something that is happening already with novel food and measures that is coming in, but in medical cannabis as well. Being able to be sure that what we're providing patients are right quality products, and that you have behind companies that take responsibility.
Yeah, because I think a big problem in medical cannabis, especially in the UK at the moment, is this kind of issue with regulation and control. And if there's no regulation and control, it's going to be a medicine that's really problematic to prescribe to patients. So I think getting that getting that underway is really important. And I
Education as well. Education, how to prescribe, because in the end of the day, I'm a big supporter of cannabis. No one will say something else. I believe, but in the end of the day, this is psychoactive material, and if a physician or a GP is not educated enough to understand how to dose the right amount, and when you're selling flowers, it's very hard to dose, and if you're giving a high THC plant for someone that never tried cannabis before, you can have a bad experience. And these are the things that you have to have education. That's one of the reasons why when you have something that is criminalized, no one is educating around it. So obviously we have cases of people that are consuming too much cannabis, consuming bad cannabis because it is criminalized. No one is
there's kind of
enforcing it. There's no
evolution,
regulation. There's no education as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's I guess why this renaissance is so exciting is that we're kind of seeing these doors open up, and allow for education and development and evolution, which is going to kind of push the industry forward. But I guess this ties in quite nicely, but veering a little bit away from just investment opportunities. But what does kind of this investment, and all these listings in the UK? What does this mean for the accessibility of medical cannabis, and how can investment, and further research have a kind of a positive impact on this? Is obviously kind of accessibility for medical cannabis is kind of one of the most important things about this industry.
I think in the short term, you will have through the private clinics more options for products beyond flowers and tinctures, and that's positive. Maybe in the short term, you will have more physicians that are involved, more clinics that are involved, and it will be easier to really access cannabis. But hopefully, that in the, I won't say long term because I hope it's not going to take long term, but let's say the midterm, you will have more companies investing in research. You will have more science-based clinical trials, and these type of things hopefully will get the NHS to pay attention to cannabis and to understand that, hey, we have here something that definitely is helping people, that there is quite a lot of interest from patients to try. Why won't we take ownership on that? Why don't we have this in our national health system, and being able to control it better, be able to support the trials around this? And don't forget that in the end of the day, cannabis is replacing addictive drugs. It doesn't matter if it's psychiatric drugs, doesn't matter if it's for opiates, or even sleeping pills that you can have dependencies on.
Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of news around kind of cannabis being a means of harm reduction, and not necessarily in the kind of recreational terminology, but more in medical terminology, kind of being able to replace opioids, and medical drugs that have larger side effects. I think that's kind of a really positive and strong point for cannabis to be used for like a whole range of different things. I guess it's kind of becoming a drug and a medication that isn't kind of a one size fits all, and very various different forms can be beneficial for different conditions. Um, and so how do you think? So would you say that expanding medical cannabis access in the UK, the kind of biggest route will be through private clinics and kind of doing further clinical research? But how might we kind of move past and beyond private clinics in the UK towards a more kind of accessible and like sustainable approach?
So we have some models. That's the benefit of not being the first one. And the UK maybe is one of the leaders. Let's say in the first cohort of companies, definitely of countries, definitely in Europe, but it's not the first. So we have models. We have the Canadian model, for example. We have the German model. Have the Israeli model. And what you see is that in most of these models that understand that the idea is to try to use the existing system and not to create a new one. But in the same time, understanding that cannabis is different. Someone told me that cannabis is not one medicine. It's a bit like a cabinet, the medicine cabinet, because you have many medicines coming from cannabis, different active ingredients. So you do need some special focus on that to understand how you do that. In Israel, there's a cannabis unit in the Ministry of Health that's specifically focusing on not only helping patients access cannabis better, but promoting research. So both of them are together, and that's actually smart, I believe. In Germany, the decision was that GPs can prescribe cannabis. They investing in education, explaining to the physicians how to work with cannabis, but letting all GPs prescribe cannabis. So it's really, the models are out there. I think the best thing is to take the best from each of the models that are working and create the best practice out there. And that's one of the things we talked before. There's a huge opportunity to create now this model of the NHS and then share it with other countries that are really in an early stage.
Yeah, kind of share best practice. I like that idea of taking bits and pieces from a bunch of different models that have this implemented to create kind of a hybrid and best version of it.
And it's nice because you can see what didn't work, like a lot of the things that didn't work in the beginning. Most of the models out there were vertically integrated. The idea of governments was, let's control less pieces of the puzzle and we'll give a company and force them to be the ones that are cultivating, producing, dispensing, and educating the patient. Now, we saw across the board that this model was problematic for many reasons, and everyone moved to separate models. So each license will be a different license. You want to cultivate, you're getting cultivation. You want to produce products, you have a different one. Distribution is a different license, and dispensing and educating and the clinics are totally different license. So that's just one small example. You can learn from other countries what not to do, and that's a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's really really important. And I guess like you've touched on, it's just such an interdisciplinary area, and there's so many different things to consider around education, around prescribing, around how to control and regulate it. It's super complex, and you need all these different facets to make the whole bigger than the sum of the parts. And I guess kind of a question to end, kind of a large kind of question to end on a final note around your kind of concluding thoughts and predictions for the space. Obviously, February 2021 has been quite a landmark month for the industry and particularly for Kanabo with your successes. And it's shown that the sector is ready for business. But what, in your eyes, do you think and what do you expect we can see occur over the next few months in the industry?
So we saw now the first wave of cannabis companies, maybe CBD companies as well, and we're gonna have a gap now, and then see the second wave that I would bet 6 months from today, maybe 5 months from today, something like that. And this should be a bigger wave than the first one because the companies saw the interest in the market, the success, and we'll have more companies listing. That will give investors the ability to pick and choose which strategy they believe in, which company and management they're choosing. And then you will see that analysts will start building their own speciality, I would say, in this field. In Canada, it's totally normal for any big media to have a journalist that is focusing in the industry, like any other industry, an analyst as well. And once you have that, they are writing on a weekly basis on the industry. So the It's a bit like a snowball, I would say, getting momentum.
Yeah, so kind of now that we've seen these listings occur with loads of success, I think it will reassure other companies that this is a good idea. So yeah, I guess we can expect to see lots more listings in 2021, and it might become a trend.
I would bet that we can see by the end of the year additional 5 to 8 companies.
Yeah, no, I mean that's super exciting, and I guess it just really shows that London's kind of open for business. So I guess now it all kind of depends what happens with those listings, and kind of what kind of progress and positive developments we can see go forward.
Yeah, and how decision makers are going to leverage this because they got an opportunity. They got an opportunity. They saw that the market is appreciating, and they saw that I I believe media and the public want to understand what is going to happen with medical cannabis in the UK.
Yeah, so I feel like there's quite a lot of pressure from a lot of sides on policymakers to do something about this. And now that this is out in the open and investment is really flourishing, it's kind of on them to make the first move, I guess. But yeah, I mean, this has been a really interesting conversation, and yeah, I think it's a super exciting time to be involved in all of this. And obviously, massive congratulations to your team at Kanabo. It's been a really exciting time, and I'm looking forward to seeing everything else that develops from it. But yeah, thank you for taking the time out to speak to me today.
Thank you. It was great.